Hello and welcome back. Happy Thursday, everyone. Today we are going to be doing a rundown of Dev Diary 123, which is aptly titled Sphere of Influence Post-Release Thoughts, coming on the heels of Sphere of Influence Release, which has been really great. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hello and welcome to another Victoria 3 Dev Diary, coming hot on the heels of Update 1.7 and the Sphere of Influence expansion. What's this? I mean, everyone's enjoying the patch. Where's our Happy Thursday? I'm confused. You know what? I think I realized what's going on. They're doubling the happy, and they're giving it to the next Thursday. I think that's what's going on. Okay. Today's Dev Diary will be a pretty short one. Yep, it's very short. Focusing on our thoughts around the release and our plans for the immediate aftermath. We will be following this up with a proper roadmap update next week, which is of course going to be the double Happy Thursday, because they're taking this happy and they're doubling it and giving it to the next one. Okay. As far as thoughts on the release go, I can definitely say we consider this release to be a very successful one. I agree. Even though there's quite a few bugs, but none of the bugs are crazy, none of them are game breaking, and the patch is enormous, and there's a ton of stuff, great improvements on the game. Performance is wildly better. The AI is way better. I think those are the two biggest ones, in addition to kind of the more bells and whistles in the form of content. I think that the infrastructure of the game is so much better and is ready to receive even more bells and whistles, although we love the bells and whistles too, and are very happy to see how much you, the players, seem to be enjoying the changes, and additions we've made to the game. The building ownership provision in particular is something we spent a massive amount of time and effort to first implement and then tweak and polish. Definitely makes sense. I think it allows the foreign investment element, as well as the ownership being divorced from the place in which the building is happening, are both two very important elements for, I think, simulating Victorian economies and the exploitative nature. You're extracting wealth from the areas you're colonizing, and you can push around people economically. I think that for the purposes of roleplay, this is going to be very important, and it makes everything feel a lot nicer in terms of just talking about the ownership. And it's very satisfying to get to read all the feedback and discussions around it now that you get to try it out for yourself. When we announced a delay, this was the saddest of Thursdays. We did so because we wanted to use the extra time to focus on the quality of the release, and this is precisely what we did. We were able to use the extra time to polish and balance the new features, improve the AI. AI seems to be a lot better, and improve the performance. And performance seems to be a lot better, and of course fix a lot of bugs. In hindsight, I can absolutely say that this was the correct decision, and that I'm very proud of what the team managers managed to accomplish with the extra time we were given. The 1.7 performance improvements in particular is an area I know a bunch of you expressed surprise, I certainly was, that we didn't really talk about that much before release. They mentioned a little bit, but they've also, I think that it was coming on the heels of 1.6 being the patch where they're like, this is a performance patch, and then the performance was kind of worse, and then it was but then 1.7 is just so much faster. The reason that we didn't is that the real impact of such improvements are actually really tricky to measure until they make contact with the player base, so to speak. We've had internal metrics. The thing is, their internal metrics are probably mostly played on observer games, and so a player game is going to have different things going on than an observer game, so I think that this is part of it, which showed us that 1.7 was substantially faster than 1.6, but those metrics were collected on a limited number of hardware setups, and we couldn't really know how it would shake out upon the thousands and thousands of different hardware configurations that are out there until you actually try it. Something I've noticed is a lot of, or not a lot of players, but some players are complaining about crashes. I haven't had crashes. A lot of other players who I talk to regularly haven't had any crashes, but here and there's crashes, and it's because you don't know what's going to happen with everyone's PC and this type of thing, and so the small sample size that they test on, when they release, of course, they're going to find a bunch of additional problems, and then they fix them, which is kind of, I think, what this next section is about. Fortunately, as far as we can tell, the overwhelming majority of players are in fact experiencing considerably improved performance in 1.7, which is honestly near the very top of things that I'm personally most happy about regarding this release. Me too, because this allows them to do other stuff moving forward, and I feel kind of going through 1.3 through 1.6 in terms of patches, a lot of times, stuff was suggested or brought up. One of the responses that was very common by the devs is we can't implement this specific feature, or maybe it wasn't common, but it always stood out to me, is we can't implement this feature because it would be too much of a drain on performance. And knowing that they have a feature in mind, they know how to implement it, but it's too heavy on performance is kind of a bit of a drag. But at the same time, this is the first patch that has been faster, I think, since release or since the first hotfix. And so it's been progressively getting slower and slower, with the exception of this passage. Getting there was by no means a straightforward process, as 1.7 introduced new performance challenges, and not least the addition of AI construction calculations for foreign investment. So how did we do it? Well, the modifier rework we explained in Dev Diary 120 was probably the biggest individual contributor. They didn't really say how much faster the game was going to go in their Dev Diary 120. They kind of used couched language, so this is probably a big reason why I wasn't expecting the huge performance increase, but yeah. But it was actually a result of dozens of improvements coming from across the team. A few examples in no particular order. The AI spending system was rewritten to be much smarter about which data it was updated and when those updates were actually needed. The design team made numerous changes to events and other parts of the script which were running slowly. Improvements were made to market updates to avoid unnecessarily frequent updating of pricing data. I wonder if this includes how many times it's calculating trade ticks. But I wonder, because a trade, if you put in several hundred trade routes, it does make the game chug a little. I guess I haven't tried it since 1.7 because I've just gotten used to doing less trade than optimal for the purposes of improving performance. Employment was made much more performant by eliminating rounding errors in the hiring logic that resulted in numerous insignificant employment changes. Well, that's good. The programmers expanded the use of smart caching and multi-threading pretty much across the entire game. Military graphics and other map graphics were also heavily optimized. So this is not, as I don't engage in game design, reading through this, it doesn't, I can't make sense of it too well, but this all seems like good stuff because I can't make sense of it and it sounds good. However, with all that said, in the release, the size and complexity will always bring with it some bugs and balance issues. Yep, which is completely okay. I still think the rollout is a ton of fun. Nothing's game breaking, and I think that they are on top of fixing stuff, and there's a ton of support tickets, and they're doing their thing that we weren't able to discover and fix in time, which are now our top priority to address. When you are reading this, and that's when you are reading this because I'm reading this early, hotfix 1.7 or 1.7.1 should already have been dropped a couple of hours ago, and we're planning to follow it up with at least one more hotfix, tentatively planned to release early next week. Gotta love the vague language. You always have to do it because if you tell them it's planned for Monday and then it releases Tuesday, oh no, the apocalypse. Everyone get out your pitchforks. But early next week, and tentatively planned, not definitively planned, then we can push it back if we need to. Obviously, you just push. If you need to push, you always have to push. And I'll wrap up this Dev Diary by wishing you a happy Thursday because I didn't do that in the intro. Wait, okay, never mind. Weird kind of spelling error here. I thought that he was supposed to say happy Thursday, but okay. 1.7.2 will contain substantial improvements through AI improvements and balance tweaks to the AI's ability to execute on historical and historically plausible outcomes. Is this redundant? Historical and historically plausible. No, I don't think it's redundant. Okay, particularly in nation forming and ability to pursue general entries such as the major restoration and the tens of reforms. Set up improvements to relations and AI attitudes to more closely match history. I imagine that when this releases, there will be a railroading discussion in the comments, which is always a little bit of a weird thing where some people want everything more railroaded and people want everything more sandboxy, and anytime something that comes up like this, it's a conversation. More aggressive colonial AI, particularly for late game grabbing in Africa. The AI is not very good at pushing malaria prevention and then actually upgrading its institution, so they generally don't colonize that fast, but also they're kind of willing to the AI doesn't properly evaluate how valuable cutting someone off from colonization is. I not that I think that this change is going to help with that. I think it's just going to make them value the provinces more instead of like some sort of cutting off strategy, which is like really valuable. Making it harder to get reparations by occupying insignificant colonies. This is a little bit of a problem, like, because whenever you fight France or Great Britain, you, like, take Guyana and war reps, and then you just, like, defend yourself and then grab that. But this doesn't seem like a huge problem to me as much as the bankroll, but I think it's I think it's unreasonable that Britain would pay war reparations because you landed Guyana and you occupied it. I think they would pay that if they were actually fearing for their life, and if this represents some sort of AI logic where they are able to understand that they're in trouble, then that would be nice. If this makes it so that you have to occupy the capital to get war reps, I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe that's an improvement. I don't think that that's the answer, but maybe it's better than the current system. Fix for poor building browser performance issues when using the scroll bar. Is that the bottom thing? I mean, currently there's, when you open up the thing through the lens, it just lags pretty hard, and that's like, that lag still doesn't, the degree to which the game's lagging there does not in any way remotely come close to making it slower relative to the fact that performance when you're like cranking through the game is just so much faster, so it's not a big deal, but that is like one area where there's lag. Improve leverage UX. Yeah, the leverage UX is pretty it's not fun to navigate, and I had a like tough time figuring it out when I initially encountered it, and then still kind of feel not so good about it, but can figure it out well enough, but it's maybe not nice for like a newer player who's trying to figure out what's going on. Allowing unrecognized major powers to form power blocks. That means we're not going to start a game where until this is allowed on an unrecognized power. I think balancing the great game to make it less biased towards Britain. My understanding is currently it calculates based on prestige, and Russia can't really catch up that well. A little bit too much rather than boots on the ground type of control or army power. Although I think in theory, if you're trying to win with Russia, you could probably spam Navy like really, really, really hard and do well on prestige if it's calculating through primarily prestige. But Great Britain gets a lot of prestige from subjects as well, so I'm not entirely sure how viable that sort of strategy is, but it might be. This above, of course, is not an exhaustive list, and we are not ruling out additional hotfixes after 1.7.2 if needed. While I think we release 1.7 in good shape, we still want to ensure that any significant new bugs and balance issues are dealt with as speedily as possible. I kind of have a list of things that I think are bugged or important to fix, but I think I've communicated with a few devs some of this stuff, and to be honest, like the stuff that I kind of want fixed is kind of not that important, like the investment pool or ownership is a little bit bugged right now for public ownership because it should not, it's over contributing to dividends in terms of proportion as a result of like a splitting between ownership that is public and private, but like does that affect gameplay in a super substantive way other than like nitpicking over like how much you can make your GDP line go up? Not really. So that's like kind of irrelevant for like the player base that I kind of want them to be fixing issues for, which is like newer players and this type of thing. Okay. For this reason, part of the team, myself included, will be wishing you a happy Thursday next week. Okay. We'll continue working for a few weeks into July, taking our vacations later in the year instead. So that means we will get extended happy Thursdays because we will be getting happy Thursdays from these devs, and then they go on vacation later, and then the other devs come back, and so there's less time without happy Thursdays, which is really important and critical in game development, so that we maintain the capacity to release fixes as needed. That's all for today, but you will be seeing me next week as I give you the double happy Thursday, make the customary roadmap and update and tell you about some of what we have in store for 1.8 and 1.9 and beyond. I can't even remember the roadmap that they had before. Some things or what I'd really like to see in 1.8, 1.9, pretty much at this point, all the things I've said I like want to see changed or fixed are pretty much been addressed in some substantive point. I think that Navy could get reworked a little bit, and I would be happy to see that. but that's not like high on my list. High on my list would be a rework of the diploplane mechanic. I think that it could be a lot better. I think that I would like to see a cultural system, but I think that that's pretty large endeavor. But I think that if you're going to track all the pops and their political stuff, and tracking the pops in a really detailed way is part of your thing, then I think that making it so that they move in certain cultural ways would be really cool. I just don't know if that's going to split them into pops too much, or different pop groups too much, and cause fragmentation, something like this. Designing that is beyond me, but I would like to see a sort of layer of intricacy on your country that is not just the laws, but it's instead the culture of like what the people value and believe. And if you have like a culture that's jingoist, you don't have as hard a time going to war than if you have a culture that's like more isolationist or something like this, or just wanting to stay neutral or this type of thing, like kind of USA like diplomacy, right? They're just like, if it happens across the lake, we don't care about it, this type of thing. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. Relatively short one. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. And other than that, have a happy Thursday.